Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Friday morning. Coming up this morning, we're going to hear from RSL head coach Pablo Mastroianni at 8 o'clock. They're getting ready to play Minnesota tomorrow night. They've also advanced as the fourth seed, the fourth and final team into the quarterfinals of the League's Cup. David Locke on the Utah Jazz schedule has been released. Hey. Nice time to go to Phoenix. David Locke with a win there. We'll talk with David about that. He's going to join us at 8:30. Right now, let's talk some Michigan football out of the gate with longtime Michigan beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, Angelique Chengelis. Kyle Whittingham's a little bit of a story, and so's, like half the staff, and so's several of the transfers they took with them. How is the transition going in your estimation?
I think based on what the players say, the players who returned from Michigan from last year, they seem to, it's been seamless, and they've also really responded to a heavy dose of discipline and just a new way of approaching things, because it was pretty chaotic, as I think you might know, last year at Michigan. And in the 2 years under Sharon Moore, it was definitely a little more lax. And I think that the players are really responding to Whittingham and his staff bringing in just, a little more demanding. But, players also like the fact that practices are efficient and shorter, and meetings are efficient and shorter. And, they're not wasting time. They're focused. And I think that's what they're all responding to.
Oh, yeah, that is Whittingham to a T. We're older guys. Myself, I had kids his age, and we lived in the same neighborhood. I went golf with him a bunch, and worked at the Salt Lake Tribune before I transferred over to radio. So I was a beat guy, and we've gotten to know him inside and out for sure. And one of the things that I always said in covering his program was that, this is usually a random example, October 20th at 2 p.m., every player, once he got in the program, and all the staff members, they knew full well October 20th at 2 p.m., they were doing the same thing when he got the job 20 years ago as they were last year. And the point I'm making is the structure was always the same, and the identity was, you knew exactly what you were supposed to do, when you were supposed to do it, and how to do it. And when you speak of that, I knew that's what he would bring to Michigan. And it seems like from the outside, with all the chaos, that is something that they very much needed.
Oh, absolutely. And even before that, Harbaugh was here for 9 years. His schedules were a little more, not scattered, but he would try to catch the players off guard. So they would have to wait. And I think his philosophy was, I want them to not be running around. I want them to have to wait for this text to find out what time practice is tomorrow. And I'm thinking more camp versus during the season. And, I also think that younger people in general really do want boundaries, and they do want structure. And that's what I think that they've craved, and that's what I think Whittingham has brought. And they really have. I mean, he's got a horn that sounds, I think meetings at 8 a.m., it sounds at 7:45, which means you're late. So they like that. They laugh about it, but they like that. And they like structure, and I can't emphasize enough that is what was missing just wholesale last year. And that's what these players really wanted.
When Rich Rodriguez was at Arizona, we had him on the show, and we got to talk to him a little bit about the time at Michigan. And obviously, Rich Rod knows a lot about football. So the issues weren't so much about football, but it was cultural, it was fit, it was relating to fans and boosters, and this whole thing about hating Ohio State. It seemed to me like, well, that's the kind of thing, not exactly, but that's the kind of thing that helped get Rich Rod off on the wrong foot. Now, he didn't win enough. There were other issues off the field, so it wasn't just this, but it was clear that Rich Rod culturally something happened there. Can you evaluate that and what this latest comment about Ohio State means or doesn't mean to the fan base?
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember going to Rich's first press conference. I liked Rich. I mean, he was the hot coach. I mean, Alabama hired him the year before, and he had issues with his AD at West Virginia, wanted a break, and came to Michigan. And I remember thinking when I walked out of there, yeah, this is going to set Michigan back 10 years. I mean, and it was more like a dozen, really. It just I just could tell this was not going to fit. I've been covering the team since 1992, so I got a sense of what Michigan is about. And I think that's been a curious thing for me watching Whittingham. I mean, I asked him the first press conference in December about Ohio State, because that's what you do at Michigan. You ask them about Ohio State. It's your biggest rival. It's the game. I grew up in Ohio. I love the game. And, he just right away didn't he grasped it, but but I'm like, okay, that's his first press conference. Cut him some slack. And, as it's gone on, I think he makes sense. You don't have to hate the person to be competitive. Of course he wants to win it. But, you see what Signetti did when he first got the job, and he's talking to the crowd at Indiana basketball and basically trashing Ohio State and Michigan and Purdue, everybody. And he's got that swagger and everybody likes. You go way back to Jim Tressel when he first got the job, and he announces that in however many days before the game against Michigan, Ohio State's going to show up and be this team that everybody wants to see. So fans rally around that. I think Whittingham has sort of tamped that down a little bit, but I don't doubt he gets a rivalry. He played in the Holy War, coached in the Holy War, and so I think he gets it, but I'm not sure he gets it yet. And
right.
And I threw in a story the other day about Rich Rod. When he first got here, a fan gave him a Beat Ohio State button that he kept on his desk, and as a reminder. And I'm thinking, you don't need a reminder, but to all this point, Jim Harbaugh took until 2021. He wouldn't talk about Ohio, he wouldn't separate it as a great rival until 21, and then he started bringing it up, and then obviously they had success after that.
I like what he said the other day. He was brought up, and when it happened down in Chicago, we came back and I said, "Oh, he's going to take some heat for that." About not just hating them with a passion of 1,000 suns and all that stuff. And we talked about it. I said, it's kind of silly, but I think he's going to take heat about it. And then I saw this week, and his response was, "Well, if I hate him, is it going to help us beat him?" And how was that received? Because he got that look on his face, and I know that look of he doesn't really understand what's going on, and he's almost to the point of being miffed about it. How about the recent thing when he said, "Well, if I hate him, how's that going to help us beat them by more," or whatever he said there?
Yeah, I listened to that and I thought, that actually kind of makes sense. But, I played recreational competitive tennis, and I would go into every match saying, I hate this person across the net. And then afterwards I was fine. And look, I've covered the game for many years, and you talk to the players, and yes, they hate each other preparing for the game. They hate each other on game day, but wow, they have a lot of respect for each other. And I think if he goes that route, but he's not going to say he hates Ryan Day, and that's fine. I mean, Jim Harbaugh took heat for making that, Ryan Day. He didn't say Ryan Day, but we all knew he was saying Ryan Day was born on third base. And so that created a lot of maybe unnecessary friction and pettiness in the rivalry. But the Michigan fans loved it. It was something that they're like, yeah, that's our coach. He's saying those things. But, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I get it. Whittingham has so much on his plate right now. And I think, in my mind, that's what he's wondering. Shouldn't everybody be focused on game 1 and not game 12? And, yeah, we understand what Ohio State means in Columbus, of all places, to play your first Michigan-Ohio State game. But what about focusing on now? And that was the vibe I got from him, is that, they do have the signs up in the building. What are you doing today to prepare for Ohio State, to beat Ohio State? So it's there, and the players know. And my sense is that Whittingham, by then, will really understand what it means.
I did see a post on one of the social media, and a guy said, give him a break. He's brand new. He can't hate him yet, but it won't take long because they're them.
That might be so. But, he's close with Urban Meyer, and Urban Meyer is a great Ohio State coach. And I do wonder sometimes, do Michigan fans, are they tired of him mentioning Urban Meyer? Because, he's someone that Michigan fans, I think, really did not care for. And, so maybe that relationship, he doesn't, because of that, he's not going to hate Ohio State in that sense. But he is going to want to beat them. I mean, there's no doubt. He's going to want to win every game. Every coach is out like that, and they'll all say that. But, I mean, I that's the only person I can compare him to is Rich Rod, is the first guy who didn't play it, play at Michigan or coach at Michigan prior to becoming a head coach. And, he'll get it. I think Rich maybe was a little more stubborn in that sense, but I don't think Whittingham is.
A lot of folks think of Utah as out in the middle of nowhere, a bunch of backwood people and all that stuff. I'm wondering, because I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I could relate to it, but I wonder, and my wife's mother actually is from the Detroit area, so she's got tons of people there. We've been there many times. And I wonder, how do all these people just react to all these folks from Utah now being in the Michigan program?
That's a great question. And I haven't gotten a sense from fans or people in Ann Arbor that, it feels different, I will say, than when Rich came. And I can't put my finger on it. I mean, it was, he's coming from West Virginia. He had an accent, and he would say words that didn't exist, like irregardless, and Michigan fans would pick up on that. And I don't think Kyle Whittingham and his staff, most of whom are from Utah. I mean, Harding is from Toledo originally, so they have that. His wife is from nearby here, Farmington Hills. But Utah is distant. I've been there Harbaugh's first game was at Utah, and I covered a basketball game there. The place is stunning. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and it does feel far away. And that's my thing is, does the staff? This is the Big Ten is a little different animal now, especially with the addition of those 4 Pac-12 teams that I suspect they're very familiar with, and. I don't think people are like, oh, my God. And if you're saying, there's an issue, there are Mormons, and, is there a church in Ann Arbor? I believe there is. And, so I don't think that that's been an issue with fans. And they just want to win, and they just want to beat Ohio State and beat Michigan State, too. I mean, they've got Pat Fitzgerald there now, and he's definitely revving up the Spartans and getting them motivated for their season and for playing Michigan. So I am really interested to see how Whittingham and his staff respond to the in-state rivalry in Ohio State, but also the challenge of the Big Ten and this schedule with Oklahoma coming. This is a brutal first year, I think, for him and this staff.
So assess the first year. What do you think the administration, which seems to be ever-changing, the boosters and the fans would label a successful year? Where is the bar set?
I think the bar, to me, I've got them. I'm thinking 7-5, 8-4, and I'm probably going to settle on 8-4. I think a lot of people would be very happy with 9 wins. I hear people, you get more excited they were on the Big Ten Network last night. They were visiting Michigan's camp, and you see different plays that are made in the background. People get more excited as the season gets closer, and they're talking college football playoff. He's got to make the college football playoff. And I thought Whittingham was very smart at Big Ten Media Days, and not setting the bar too low, but just saying, look, year 2 is really when things will click. And this is a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, so there's a lot of new going on here. And so I think 9 wins is what a lot of people are hoping for. And 10 would be a nice bonus. But I just think realistically looking at this schedule and really not knowing, we don't know a lot about what Bryce Underwood is going to look like. And we can, be told that he's making improvements, but, what does that mean? And so that's why I think 8-4 seems to me a reasonable prediction for this season.
Yeah, we had on Tim Brando the other day, and he was saying that he didn't think it was going to go well, and that I was surprised. Because it's still Michigan, and going well, I guess, is relative. So 8-4, is that going well?
No, I don't think it's going well. I think it's a reasonable expectation for a first year, and Whittingham has had to come into a situation that he had to clean up. There was a lot, there was a mess. And now, as you mentioned, changing administrations, Michigan is looking for a new president. They're going to be looking for a new athletic director. Warren Manuel will be out by the end of the year. So there is a lot of that on that end. What I understand is he has been tireless in terms of, and I'm talking about Whittingham, in terms of visiting with donors and raising money. And it's an embarrassment of riches, I think, for Whittingham right now with the money that Michigan has for this football program, what they've raised for NIL, plus the revenue share. So I think that he has talked a lot about that, about the talent, and I think you're seeing some of that success translating to their recruiting and landing a lot of really top recruits. So I think there's so much on his plate right now. I think, when you look at Oklahoma in week 2, and then you've got Indiana coming here, and they go on the road to Oregon late, and then Ohio State. To me, those are the 4 losses. That's what and there's part of me that thinks that they could lose a game that they shouldn't lose, like at Minnesota or Iowa in Ann Arbor. I mean, Iowa, that defense can always be extremely, extremely suffocating. So I just think 8 wins in my mind is a very reasonable start to his coaching career at Michigan. And as he said, year 2 is when you really start having greater expectations for the program, because then Underwood's a sophomore, and he started as a young freshman last year, and he's got to see how he adapts to Jason Beck. And he's had a lot of training in LA with Palmer and trying to fix his footwork, all these things. But those aren't just wave a wand and they're fixed. So I think that's why he's sort of pointing. I don't think he was saying, just this is a wash this year. But I think he's pointing to year 2 as that's when you're really going to see what they're capable of.
Have you had a chance to interact with Jay Hill much?
A little bit. I mean, he's been to 2 press conferences, and he's been on a couple of the in-house podcasts that Michigan has, and he's talked about what a difficult he wants this. He believes this is the most challenging defense, the most complicated defense in the country, and I asked him about that the other day, and he said he's got about, I think, 65 to 70% install, and that's probably where they're maxing out this year. So I think he feels good about what he has. I think linebacker is thin, and that's going to be an issue, but they feel really good about their defensive line and their secondary. So, but he seems pretty pleased with the talent he has inherited here and what he brought. With Daly and Snowden. So I think they feel really good about the personnel.
You were on our show September 24th, 2015. Do you believe that?
Yeah, that was Jim's. That was right before Jim's first game, right? Yeah.
So what I want you to do is next time you get up with Whittingham, tell him you're on the DJ PK show and tell him we miss him dearly. He'll get a kick out of that.
I will definitely do that. And I remember that trip. It was great. But then I decided to drive to Park City, and I wasn't prepared for the altitude, so I had to pull off the road, and, it didn't feel so great.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not tough enough yet. We don't have any mountains here. We don't have any, it's too flat here, so I got to work on that.
There's Michigan beat writer Angelique Chengelis working for the Detroit Free Press. When we come back, Eric Pincus, longtime NBA reporter on the sale of the Lakers. What does it all mean? We'll talk with Eric next. DJ PK, it's 97.5 KSL Sports Zone. We are joined now by Eric Pincus. Eric, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
As a national NBA writer for Bleacher Report, how blown away were you by the news the Lakers were getting sold?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, my dog woke me up. I don't wake up this early unless you guys call me and want me to do the show. So my dog woke me up just to let her out the room, and I'm good at going back to sleep. That's not a problem for me. Some people, they get woken up, they can't go back to sleep. But I look at my phone just to make sure there's no, emergencies and whatnot. And it was like literally right when Ramona Shelburne of ESPN had the story. And Lordy, if I had billions of dollars, which, spoiler, I don't, but if I did, I would certainly want to buy the Lakers and not flip them for a profit. Like, that's not I'm not just the Lakers or, an NBA team. I would love to have an NBA team. That would be fun. And I would not try to just buy it so I can sell it. That's not the reason why I would want a team. And it was certainly surprising. It's an understatement to say surprising.
Does it mean anything for the day-to-day operations, or maybe we don't know yet?
So, a sale like this usually takes anywhere between 2 to 6 months in terms of the NBA approving. I mean, 2 would be aggressive. I would be surprised, normal surprise, not like shocked like we were the other day, if they got it done by the end of the year. But, that's reasonable, like around December. But let's just pencil in for safety, let's say All-Star. So around February. So, a team isn't going to drastically change, in terms of like the 26-27 season immediately. If there's an ownership change in February, they're not likely to change any sort of anything really. And honestly, like Jeannie Buss, who's the governor of the team, she's not obligated to do anything that the new owners want to do because it's not official yet anyway. So, short term, no. Long term, yeah, I mean, things were already changing, but I think key to the original sale to Mark Walter was an agreement that Jeannie Buss would run the team for 5 years. Now, that was met with a lot of skepticism, at least when I talked about it and wrote about it. People say, new owner, they just spent all this money to buy the Lakers. They're not going to let Jeannie run the team because they're going to want to run the team. But at least talking to people, this was in the agreement when the NBA announced the sale. They included that note in their announcement. I feel like at least I gave an over-under of like 3.5 years, and I took the over that Jeannie would run the team for a handful of years. So 4 or 5 years. Maybe she'd leave 1 year early, something like that. But now there's this new sale, and, honestly, like if you buy an apartment building or a complex and there are leases, you're buying the leases. It's not like those leases go away and you can kick everyone out. So I just don't know what's the legality of the language. Do they fight it? It's a quandary. I don't know the answer. No one at this point really knows the answer.
It also seems like you said, it's going to take a while to close the sale. And if you've never owned an NBA team before, having somebody for a year just to show you what's going on, the normal ropes of, these are the timelines of doing this, that, and all that. And by that time, she's down to 2.5 years and everything's negotiable. So I don't know. That didn't seem like that big a deal to me. Having been at media companies where a family sold and they signed themselves to 5-year contracts before they sold, like it'll last as long as it lasts and it'll move on. It's not that big a deal. Yeah,
it is for someone like, Rob Pelinka, who's the general manager, and for the operations staff, for the coach, JJ Redick. Like normally when a new owner comes in, they install their own people. But you're right in that it doesn't happen day one. It usually takes a good year. I would say like the first year, and that's not like the new owner of the Blazers immediately made massive sweeping changes. Although they still have the same GM, they have a different head coach, and they've made it's just a very different culture. But yeah, usually it's a year of trying to figure out just the lay of the land. As you pointed out, like how does it function? Who's functioning well? But a lot of times they want to bring in their own basketball chief, the person who's going to make the primary decisions. And then, what we saw previously with the Lakers under Mark Walter is that the basketball operations staff didn't change, but they started to change over some of the business. They actually got rid of, I believe, 2 sections of media seating, which I'm not a fan of, but, I get it. Like, we had 108 and 114. I know 108 was gone for the playoffs. And I think they're selling them as seats. So, like, to raise more income, to make it more profitable, I get it. It's not my favorite aspect, but there are going to be changes. And is it a big deal? Well, I don't know. I would say that, the optimism on the Laker fan side of the equation with the Dodgers owner buying the Lakers is that the Lakers previously under the Buss family ran a pretty threadbare organization. And if you go back to Dr. Jerry Buss, who owned the team before Jeannie and passed it on to his family, he invested in players more than like infrastructure. Like that was his belief, that you pay the players. Jerry West infamously was not paid a ton of money, and that's ultimately why he left, or part of why he left. So the Dodgers, though, they spend top dollar. We're not going to get into the inequities of MLB, but they spend a ton of money and they win a lot of championships. So the optimism on the Lakers side is that the Lakers would become the Dodgers when it comes to building out a giant organization that does things very well. And now we have no idea what the character are of Jared Kushner and Bob Iger outside of, their track records outside of sport.
Yeah, and you mentioned Walter with the Dodgers there, and there's some issues with some loans and taxes and thoughts that, he had to sell it to take care of these other obligations that are forthcoming and all that, and possible legal proceedings. With all that said, how does that affect the Dodgers, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we can go into, lots and lots of conspiracy theories without any sort of actual information. But what we do know is that there is an investigation into some of all that you alluded to. And so, we could say maybe, obviously Josh Kushner is related to Jared Kushner, who is the husband of Ivanka Trump, who is the daughter of the President of the United States. So, the conspiracy theories are going to write themselves, and I have no information. We can absolutely circumstantially make up something. I'm just curious to see, does the government, cease their investigation into this, or is this just a funding thing? We have no idea. But time is, is on your side in terms of telling the story. Eventually the truth does come out, or at least, some of the truths or part of the truth. So we'll find out. As far as the Dodgers, the Dodger fans don't want there to be any changes because they're, back to back and spending more money than anyone. And baseball's going into its own quandary of labor negotiations, and do they put in a salary cap and all that. We don't have any information at this point to say that, they've indicated this doesn't impact the Dodgers. So I don't like to take things on face value. I'm a journalist. That's like literally kind of the opposite of what we do. But in the short term, without any additional information, I'll take it on face value.
There was a stretch where the Lakers were in the NBA Finals from like 1950 to 2010. They basically went to half of the NBA Finals. I mean, it was just amazing how often that club was showing up at the end. Now we've had about 15 years here where they've only been a couple of times. Do you have any sense with this new ownership if they can get back to being the Lakers and being dominant, or if this is good news for everybody else in the West who dreams of going to the NBA Finals and winning a trophy?
Well, the NBA system is, not based on just who spends the most money. If so, like the Clippers would always win. But, the Warriors were also a team that spent the most money over the last, 10 years or so. And, basketball is so unique in that it's really, if you have the best player, or at least a top 5 player on the planet, you're likely to be at least in the running for a championship team going to the finals. So the Lakers had Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They had Kobe and Shaq and Kobe and Pau. And then obviously, getting LeBron James, but they got LeBron James later, much later in his career, although, he's still 41, almost 42 and still pretty spectacular. They have Luka Doncic. And so Luka is among the top 5 talents in the league, and we could debate that and argue it. And if someone wants to say he's top 10 and not top 5, fine, but I would have a hard time finding someone to say he's lower than 10, at least offensively. He's not like this lockdown defender, to say the least, but he's an incredible scorer. So that they have that player suggests that they have an opportunity to stay at this level. But we're seeing parity. We've seen parity for about 8 years, which predates the current CBA with the aprons. And the aprons should, in theory, just sort of reinforce how difficult it is to build dynasties. So, the NBA has evolved. The league has evolved. I said, like, the Warriors are one of the highest spending teams. That's not why they had the success they had. It was because they had Steph Curry, who is generational, multi-generational talent as far as shooter, the best we've really ever seen in the league. So obviously, if you're the Jazz fan, you need generational talent, and maybe that becomes Keontae George. Maybe he grows into that. You just go team by team. We don't know what Victor Wembanyama certainly seems to be that. We don't know what Cooper Flagg will be or AJ DeBance does. So that generational talent is the most important thing. Lakers have that, so they're at least in the running to become some sort of dynasty. But we're just not seeing dynasties right now in the NBA.
As the sale proceeds along being official, how do you think it'll work now when decisions come up during the course of the season in terms of who's going to be able to make them?
Well, that goes back to the agreement that Mark Walter had with Jeannie Buss, is that Jeannie's running the team. She's a governor. She's the one voting when it comes to, the Board of Governors and NBA decisions. He obviously has input and say, or, at least, it's still current tense because it's not a past tense thing yet. Jeannie is going to have, some interaction with the owner of the team and educate him on what their decisions are. But still, she trusts Rob Pelinka, and some people think he's great and some people don't. He's won a ring. He traded for Luka Doncic. So the resume is there. There's also other areas. He traded for Russell Westbrook and, did other things. And Russ has had a great career, and I'm happy for his retirement. But his pairing with LeBron James and Anthony Davis was a ill-fitting decision. So, but she trusts Rob to make these decisions and to build a team. And I don't know that the new owners, because she'll likely, there will be a dialogue. I would imagine they'll be involved in understanding, but they don't have the authority to tell Jeannie at this point what to do and what not to do. So these things become sticky, and at least the Walter Jeannie decision was a partnership, and this is really being done without Jeannie's say. But equally, she'll want to have a relationship, I imagine, with the new ownership so that there isn't a conflict for her remaining 3.5, 4 years. So, yeah, these are, real questions that we don't have the real answers to. I don't know that Jeannie Buss has the answers to these questions. I don't know that Mark Walter does or the new owners do, let alone, us just chatting about it, a day removed from this crazy news.
Man, the NBA is supposed to be quiet in August.
Seriously.
You were supposed to catch a break.
Nah, it's a year-round job. I love it. We get the schedule, I think, today. And then I would like to say that we get the Kawhi news of whatever's going to happen with the Clippers in late August after the schedule. But, I can't promise you that. But that's usually when the bad news comes, late August. So, yeah, this has definitely not been a quiet summer for me and for the NBA fans. So I'm happy about it. I don't mind. I don't need a lot of vacation. My wife's cool with it. As long as we get to see a movie or go out on a date here and there, we'll be all right.
Well, Eric, we appreciate you waking up early, letting the dog out, and talking to us.
Appreciate it.
Who let the dog out?
Eric did,
okay,
as it turns out.
Right.
As it turns out. All right, thanks a lot, Eric. We appreciate it.
All right, guys.
There's Eric Pincus talking about the sale of the Lakers. When we come back, we'll go to Uten Cougar Camp with Jordan Gross and Aaron Roderick. Stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Friday morning. It's time to go to Uten Cougar Camp. Let's start with Utah offensive line coach Jordan Gross.
Jordan, how comfortable are you feeling now as a coach, now that you've had spring? I know it's still a lot to go, but how comfortable are you feeling right now?
Yeah, feeling very settled into the role. Just the people, the offense, the way Coach Scally wants things done. Definitely excited and anxious for focusing right now on training camp and making sure I'm as prepared as I can be and giving these players everything they need to succeed. Supporting the vision that Coach Scally's got in place for this thing. And then, man, anxiously anticipating the first game at Rice Eccles. I've been in that stadium a ton of times, but never in this role. So that'll be a new experience. I just got to go jump in and get my feet wet with that. But so far, so good.
Coach, who are some of the players from the last time you saw them in the spring to now the start of fall camp who have made the biggest growth in their game, would you say?
Cedric Jefferson's had a really great summer and off season from that springtime to now. He wasn't on this roster last season, came in from Montana State and put on a lot of great weight and just a grinder every day. He's done a fantastic job. Ike Garcia also started spring ball not able to participate, coming back from his injury from last season. And by the end of spring ball, he was looking great, and now that's just continued on into camp. Our veteran guys, Al Harrison, his name comes up a lot. It's just so exciting to see him in this role with the opportunity to be a starting center, and he's waited a really long time for that. And give him a lot of flack about how old he is, but that experience at the same time is so dang valuable, and he's just been rock solid for us. I mean, honestly, I could go down the list. Obot is as advertised, and he's just put on the weight that's needed to put himself in contention for a lot of reps this season as well. So really, really proud of the work those guys have done, and hats off to Coach Saunders and his staff with the weight room. Productivity this summer was really above and beyond anything I would expected to have had happen in that short amount of time.
To build off of that, the summer workouts, there's been a lot of talk of that this week, how players benefited from that. What do you, as the offensive line coach, what can you take away in the first week of fall camp? Obviously, the next step is putting on the pads and all that, and seeing the benefits there.
Most every player put on weight this summer, and we want everybody as big as humanly possible to still be able to move and play your position. And so what was nice about witnessing the summer program was with those big guys were moving constantly, dynamically, and doing cardio stuff, pushing things. So it's not as if the goal is just to sit around and eat a bunch of steaks and get as big as we can. Now, that being said, anytime you put weight on, so Zaraway Williams is a great example. Zaraway, one point this summer, was up to 331. And, that's at a body fat percentage under 26, which is just incredible. But that's still more weight than he played at last season. So what I've witnessed early in camp was that the guys got to get used to that added weight, even though it's muscular density and the body composition information says, man, this is the right thing that we've done with this weight gain. That just takes a little time to get used to moving around an extra 10 or 15 pounds. And that's the way camp always is, especially for the big guys on both sides of the ball. You start running around and pushing on each other. That cardio that you did in the summer just isn't the same. And so day 2 was a lot better than day 1, and now I expect the rest of this week to just continue to climb.
Assuming the starting 5 isn't necessarily locked in, maybe not even your first few weeks of the season, how many offensive linemen do you feel are comfortable kicking off Big 12 football today? Yeah,
great question. It's just been such a cool experience watching these guys embrace this opportunity to contribute, where for the last few seasons there was just some pretty solidified starters on that O-line. And so, I would say that I feel that there's 10 guys that we could take into a game and we could play football with. And that number could grow or shrink depending on what we see the rest of the way through camp. Doesn't mean that everybody's the same level of player and each one of those guys are the exact same, but they've really done an incredible job of buying into what we're doing and getting themselves to be able to compete. And that's what you want as a position coach, is to have competition and guys pushing themselves in our own room so nobody's comfortable. And when they're hungry like that, I'm not comfortable, because I know they have a mission that they're on individually and as a unit. So I have to be ready with all the information they need, all the meeting time they need, all the film study they need, all the tips and all the individual technique drills we can do, so that I'm giving them every chance to seize the opportunities they have.
Is there a certain point in fall camp where you want to establish a starting 5 so they can start getting chemistry with each other going into the season?
I wouldn't say we have a date in mind. Coach Scally runs the show, so I would lean on him a little bit to determine if there was a hard line in the sand we had to arrive at. My position group is the biggest on the field. So it's rare that you have everybody fully healthy, fully available every day at practice. So we could start a starting 5 right now I would guess that Keith Olson would be on that list, but he's not practicing because he's got a sore hamstring right now. So O-line is always a work in progress and always fluidity to it, and starter mentality is what we talk about more in our room than being a starter because, perfect example, yesterday in a drill, we're doing, Nick Halleck, who's a really bright future here as a young guy for us, but he's further down the depth chart. Guys are, whatever happens in the drill, all of a sudden, I need a guard. Nick, get in there. And Nick's running with 2-minute drill with, the second group, whereas that wasn't where he was at to start the day. So that creates a pretty battle-tested mentality for our guys. And, man, I would sure embrace that way of thinking.
Last one with that.
You talked about potentially having 10 guys that you could, if there was a game tomorrow, you could go in and fall with. When you've got that many guys that are fighting for a starting job, what needs to happen for the communication and that cohesion that needs to develop over the course of time for a really solid unit as opposed to the individual players?
Yeah, that's a great question. I firmly believe in honest communication with the players. When we exited spring ball, we did one-on-ones, Coach Gerke and I directly telling everybody where you ended up on the depth chart, what we see you need to work on, and what you're good at. And some of those things aren't really easy to tell young kids, but that information is critical for them to know where they stand. And so then we did the same thing coming out of summer before we started camp. Here's what you can expect rep-wise. Here's where you're at. And really just not making it the elephant in the room, right? Open conversation about that we are in competition, that we're all one team, that you got to have a starter mentality. And you've got to show love to everybody, treat everybody the same, be the same fairness, and hold yourself accountable. We're in meetings. We have meetings this morning. I put a diagram up on the film or up on the board, and there's mistakes on there. Man, guys, I screwed that up. That is not good. I got to do better than that. If you guys see something, say something. And so we all know that the ego is kept at the door when we come to that O-line room. And, man, you might not be selected as the starter, but your value is great in our O-line room and on our team.
There's Utah offensive line coach Jordan Gross. Now here's BYU's offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick.
Week 2, how you feeling?
Good. Off to a good start. We're only can't draw too many conclusions yet, but we have a good team, and I like what we're doing out here.
As you look at your offensive line, there's obviously a bit of a shuffle, but you have some mainstays like Bruce back. How much does that help to have veteran guys that can obviously just step in and play right away?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest strength of our whole offense right now is just a lot of guys that have played a lot of snaps in big games and guys that know what they're doing. We're farther along than we've ever been in terms of knowing the offense, and it always starts with the line. Those guys they have a lot of information to process every play, and so those veteran guys are really critical to our success.
For being a relatively young room, just when I talk about returning reps, it feels like the wide receiver room could also be deep at the same time. Does that make sense? How do you feel about that group?
Yeah, I like those guys, man. They're playing good football out here, and they're a good group. People haven't seen them do it on game day yet, but I'm really confident in those guys, and I like what they're doing so far.
How would you say the connections are going so far between the quarterback position and the outside guys, the wideouts?
Good so far. Yeah, we're only 5 practices in. We need to keep developing that chemistry. It takes time. It's just every single rep adds up, and when you get to the games, you want it to be the 1,000th time that they've thrown this ball, in this situation when you're calling that play on third down. Hopefully you've banked 1,000 reps at it, and so that's what we're trying to accomplish out here, and we're making progress.
At tight end, if Roger and Walker were, say, 2 of your top guys, how good is that collection of tight end talent based on what you've coached here yet?
Really good. This is the best tight end group we've had since I've been here as a group, and Roger and Walker are 2 of our best players, and they will play in the game together a lot. Those guys are a big part of what we're doing. Thanks.
You said a couple of times last year that the whole playbook was open to Bear.
Yeah.
How do you enhance that this year as he becomes a sophomore?
Yeah, he knows it even better now. I mean, he's a really smart kid. Almost every play, he has multiple options to get us into the best play possible, and we give him parameters. But he's a smart dude, and he has smart players around him too. That's one of our strengths here is we have smart kids, and so we're a team that's gonna try to get in the best play we can every snap.
Will it feel like it's opened up maybe a little more for him this year as a sophomore?
Yeah, I mean, I think he feels it. I don't know if everybody else will notice it, but I think he definitely feels it. And sometimes him getting us into the right play, it might be a boring 3-yard run play, but maybe the first play we had would have been a sack, and so he gets us into a 3-yard gain that everyone in the stands would never notice, but it's actually he just did a really good thing for us to get us to that next play. And so there's a lot of things like that going on out here where he's really given us a chance to, I think, be more explosive this year.
What about Sione Moa? Just having him back, what options does he give you?
Well, he's a really good player. Sione, like LJ, is a good runner. He's a good blocker, and he's a very good receiver. And Sione is a super athlete. He's one of the best athletes on our team, and he's had some bad luck staying healthy. But if he's healthy and he can stay healthy, he'll be a big part of our offense.
Coach, you've been in OC now for a while. You might be even a veteran, people would say. What's your favorite part of coming out here every day, spending all that time working? What's your favorite part of being an OC here at BYU?
I enjoy watching the players improve, watching players develop. And with that development, I like seeing our offense develop, where you install some concept or some scheme. You teach it to the players, you show them film, then they drill it in practice, and we work it as a team, and you see that process of refining your schemes and getting better at them. And while that's happening, you see individual players develop and get better. I mean, that's the most gratifying part for me, is just seeing those guys improve and the enjoyment they get out of playing the game. It's fun to be around those guys.
Like you said, it's only 5 practices in, but as of now, what excites you the most about this offense? What do you think the fans are going to be most excited to see?
Well, I just think that you're going to see a team that's tough, that plays really hard, and we got a lot of weapons, and I think we're a team that can win any type of game. We want to be the type of offense that can win any type of game any way we have to win it. If we have to run the ball and grind it out in bad weather or something like that, we feel like we can do that. If we need to come from behind and throw the ball around then we feel like we can do that too. We want to be a balanced team, but I think what people are going to enjoy seeing is just that we're going to be a really tough, hard-nosed team that's going to play really, really hard and play with a lot of energy and a lot of passion.
A couple of seasons ago, you had made a comment that, kind of looking back on the year, that maybe in the grand scheme of things, you maybe had added too many new players to the mix, and it took a little bit longer to get everybody on the same page. Mm-hmm. When you look back on that, how much do you think that realization has helped you guys over the last couple of years as you navigated the off seasons and bringing in personnel for the upcoming years?
Yeah, well, first of all, we've lost fewer players to the portal than most programs do, and so I think that's been one of our strengths, is we've had a lot of continuity with players staying in the program, returning, and then we just fill in, we plug a hole here and there with a transfer portal guy or whatever. I think when you're in a situation like we were our first year in the Big 12, where we had to bring in quite a few transfers, then your execution's probably going to suffer a little bit, just because it takes time to get that continuity. So we've been very successful with transfers here. Most of the transfers we brought in have been really good for us. We just want to retain our team every year, and then just a guy here, a guy there. That way we can keep our execution at a high level.
When players come back to camp, what's one thing that really impresses you when they get here, and then maybe one thing that when they come back, maybe a player that frustrates you, maybe? Yeah.
Well, you know what? Nowadays, it's not really they come back. I mean, they're here all summer. We've been around these guys all summer, and there really isn't. It's not like the old days where, hey, see you next fall at the end of spring ball. They've been here all summer working, and our team's in really good shape. I've been impressed with how much work they put in, and we've been able to be around them a lot. The rules are different now than they used to be, so it's just a different situation now.
There's BYU offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.